The CIA was seeking a new weapon aimed not at the body, but at the mind.
Those who control your words control your mind.
You say the president is using mind control, but how is that provable?
Your mind. You can calm it, lose it, change it, blow it, or even use it to follow the advice of 90s R&B groups. But your mind is also something that other people or forces are trying to control. And sure, your brain is an impenetrable fortress, and advertising doesn't work on you, and you've listened to enough true crime podcasts to recognize a cult when you see one. But people hoping to influence your thoughts have countless ways to at least try. And it sure seems like they can get you to do some pretty weird stuff, at least if we're to believe everything we see on TV.
A shopkeeper has lost hundreds of pounds of cash after a thief used a trick that appears to leave the victim hypnotised.
Even we were surprised to hear of the latest tactic to sell a house, hypnosis.
Whether hypnosis can literally capture your mind has figuratively captured our minds for centuries. Whether it was young Sigmund Freud, or the evil mom from Get Out, or just someone trying to figure out a new use for their old pocket watch.
Soon, we drop into a very deep, hypnotic sleep.
1, 2...
And sleep.
Hypnosis can put people into a state where they experience heightened focus and concentration and a stronger than usual response to suggestion. It's sometimes used as part of therapy for helping to treat depression, lose weight, quit smoking, or cope with pain. There are also more disturbing uses of hypnosis.
Thorough understanding of what seduction through hypnosis is, you will be able to fully grasp the concept of this revolutionary new method of seduction.
The fact is that if you're not using hypnosis, deep persuasion, and mind control techniques to seduce women, you're losing out big time.
These alternative types of hypnosis, which don't seem to take into account, consent, became popular in the 80s. They're part of a pseudoscience called neurolinguistic programming. It relies on subtle touches, cues, and language choices to bend someone's will. It repurposes parts of hypnotherapy for more self-serving purposes like sex, sales, or convincing people no, it's totally normal how much time I spend online trying to learn hypnosis. Many hypnotists argue that hypnosis isn't mind control at all, since they claim it can't make someone do something they truly don't want to do. Because no officer, you see, they wouldn't have given me the cash unless deep down they really wanted me to have it. Even if you're able to fend off aspiring hypnotists, there are plenty of other forces trying to gain control of your brain by possessing your body. Forces like, I don't know, the devil? Ever heard of him? The Catholic Church has. According to them, the number of exorcisms they've performed has gone up over the last few decades.
Speak, I command you.
A troubling trend, whether the church is just doing exorcisms all willy-nilly, or the devil got himself organized and upped his productivity. If you don't believe the devil is trying to take over your brain and body because, honestly, what makes you so special, the natural world is full of other threats to your autonomy, like behavior-altering parasites, a phrase that can be used to refer to your exes. Got 'em. Toxoplasma gondii is a parasite found in around a third of all people. It's usually passed through animal feces, most notably via cat litter boxes. Researchers tentatively linked Toxoplasma gondii infection in humans with impulsive behavior and mental illness. And they found that those who were infected were over 2.5 times more likely to have traffic accidents, which left some people wondering whether cats can control their owners' minds. And while a 2016 study concluded that there was little to no real evidence for these claims, I still recommend not eating your cat's poop. Governments have also tried to control people through chemical concoctions, also known as drugs. During the Cold War, the U.S.'s drug of choice was LSD. Headed up by the CIA, Project MKUltra was a series of dangerous, often unethical, and sometimes illegal experiments on controlling human behavior. They included methods like torture, sensory deprivation, electroshock treatments, and dosing thousands of subjects with LSD and other drugs, sometimes against their will. The program shattered the lives of many of its subjects, some reporting long-term trauma and permanent debilitation. And if you're one of those weird, the ends justify the means people, you'll be disappointed to hear that long after the program ended, the guy in charge concluded that the work there had been useless. MKUltra was driven by the US's fear that the Soviet Union was also working on mind control tech, which they were. The Soviets had a $1 billion program for mind control research they called psychotronics, which was built on the pseudoscientific theory that brains could send and receive a kind of high-frequency electromagnetic radiation. While I would happily accept $1 billion of government money to essentially come up with the idea of being on the same wavelength, the Soviets' ideas feel pretty similar to some modern takes on mind control.
It's not that the microwaves have somehow interfaced with the brain. We already interface with the space winds and all these other magnetic fields.
Some aspiring mind controllers try to manipulate one person at a time, which, if we're being honest, is inefficient. Mental manipulators who actually believe in themselves try to mesmerize large groups at once. Marketing researchers in the 1950s fell in love with the idea of using subliminal messaging, provocative images and messages flashing on a screen so quickly that the conscious brain wouldn't register them, but would be influenced to buy something. It's unclear how effective subliminal messaging is, as some say it works, others say it doesn't, and the rest of us are pretty sure it's just a lazy stand-in for a good ad campaign. But more subtle cues can also inform our consumer habits. In one study, playing French music in a supermarket increased sales of French wine, while piping in German music increased sales of German wine. And I can only assume that playing Taylor Swift would increase sales of very bland wines that every few years my friends insist I try, saying, no, it's good now. These days, many mind control anxieties center around the media and how it molds our thoughts and actions. In 2018, the largest owner of local TV news stations in the US, Sinclair Broadcast Group, made hundreds of news anchors read the same script on air. Deadspin compiled those messages into an eerie mashup.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think.
The irony of making broadcasters criticize bias and agenda pushing with the same word-for-word script is, well, it's so rich it doesn't have to pay taxes. While Sinclair claimed the segment was a promotional campaign to warn against fake news, the segment led people to accuse Sinclair of being a cult and brainwashing its audiences. But it is true that the internet, and social media in particular, have a massive influence over what we think.
Some programmers call it brain hacking, and the tech world would probably prefer you didn't hear about it.
Once social media was designed and keeps on creating itself, then the social media, in fact, is going to be shaping the brain.
Social media can radicalize unsuspecting users into extreme beliefs and change our behavior through habit building and conditioning, reinforced with tiny rewards like notifications or getting likes, or punishments like no notifications, or people who comment on a post without liking it. Where do you get off? While big tech isn't dosing you with LSD, although some of them definitely would if you let them, that doesn't mean there isn't a chemical element. Social media has been compared to other addictive habits, like gambling, because it gives your brain a hit of dopamine, which, if you ask the people who built Facebook, wasn't by accident.
It's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology.
In a 2014 paper with the terrifying title, Experimental Evidence of Massive Scale Emotional Contagion Through Social Networks, researchers working at Facebook seemed to show they could alter users' moods and posting behavior by tinkering with their feeds. The study was condemned for failing to get consent from the hundreds of thousands of people it turned into subjects. Facebook spokespeople later apologized, but CEO Mark Zuckerberg was probably busy applying a completely appropriate amount of sunscreen. You probably have at least a few years before social media, street hypnotists, or pet parasites turn you into a complete zombie. After all, at best, most methods of mind control have never worked exactly as advertised, and at worst, they range from dressed-up cruelty to outright myths. But given the great amount of effort individuals, companies, and governments have put into attempts at mind control and manipulation over the years, staying vigilant is kind of understandable. So for now, maybe you can relax and focus on something else, like these fine pocket watches I have for sale.